Hello. Rob Morales, RCO Network, here on a Tuesday at the regular time with my esteemed co-host on the inner journey. Please welcome Miss Mary, also known as Heather, VanAlstyne.
Hello.
Yeah, she's infamous. She's famous. Everybody knows you're here, so thank you, Mary, for joining me. Every week, we bring you information about the nuances of emotion and things that are just happening in our world, and hopefully connecting with you and sharing the things that we come across in a different platform. You know, because I think with emotions and certain things in life, you're not able to really express those or talk about them with just anybody. So we figured, why not bring it here to this platform, to this show, and for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be talking about those things. So if you like what you're hearing, seeing anything, give us a comment, give us a like, whatever you got to do. Subscribe on our YouTube channel, because we saw today our views are going up because people love us. We got 3 thumbs ups. Yay. So if you give us a thumbs up, we're going to see if we can beat last week's number. So we're here another week. We've been on this whole journey together. I reached out to Mary a couple, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I said, hey, you know what? I want to try this platform. I want to have a place to where we can talk about feelings and emotions, just different oddball things in life that you can't really talk to about anyway. So, Mary, for instance, did you ever talk to your parents about sex?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
I didn't either. So we want to make sure, because we've talked about those subjects here before, we want to make sure we have a platform for everybody here to kind of chime in and be expressive, not in a hate kind of way, because sometimes things kind of go that way, whatever. But we're here to kind of explore those things. So as Mary came in today, we talked about, what did we talk about? What's today's topic?
Today's topic, we were talking about the G word.
Oh, the G word.
The G word.
Not the G spot.
Not the G spot, not today.
That's a different G. That's a different G.
It's a different G. We were talking about God.
Yeah.
God. And what does that mean? And what is spirituality versus religion?
Yeah.
And just the different beliefs and fears that have been created in society around all of that kind of thing. So that's what we were talking about.
So I guess the question of the day, is there a God, Miss Mary?
Is there a God?
I went there, yeah.
Well, I believe that God is basically just, it is just one of the many words that are out there to describe something that is completely indescribable by the human, right? It is this force that's out there that we don't quite understand. So in order for our minds to understand, I believe that we created these different entities that we call gods or deities, or we call it universe or source, and these are all things that we are trying to understand, something that we may never understand. And so I believe there is a God, although I don't believe necessarily that he's the guy with the white beard in the clouds watching over us, shaming us with his finger. That's kind of where I stand at this point in my journey.
Well, I mean, a lot of our concepts of what God is and who God is through art and paintings and its interpretation. And really, that's what religion is. It's an interpretation of these feelings and the sense of spirituality, at least in my belief. I grew up Catholic. I was an altar boy for a good 7-8 years. My mom is here. She'll testify to that. And when you grow up Catholic, my take and my recollection of everything Catholic was like guilt. Everything was guilt. If you don't do something, God's going to punish you. And I think, in my journey and everything that I've explored what God is, it's always been with that notion that he's there to he's the arbiter of everything good and bad. And he's somebody that, and this is me growing up, he's somebody that's going to kind of rectify your situation if need be. He's going to be like I said, the person, kind of the judge and jury for everything that you do in this life. And when you grow up that way, you kind of, in my capacities, fear him, because we talked about fears too. And I don't necessarily believe that's the direction, or at least the overall arching thing, what God is supposed to represent, but what do I know? I grew up Catholic, so I got the Catholic lens.
And every different religion also has a different take on that. Yeah. Some religions believe, or studies believe, that there is no good or bad. There is no wrong. It's basically just polarity, which is interpreted by the person, right? However they want to interpret it. So I was not raised religious, although I guess we were loosely Christian. So I believed in God and Jesus and that kind of thing. So it's kind of the same thing. It wasn't, you always are feeling like someone's watching you and judging you at all times about your every action, and it creates this. Sometimes, I mean, if it's not, it all based on the church that you go to or the parents that you were raised with, it's so many different interpretations of what I believe is the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and and again, it's really your perspective, how you grew up and the culture you came into. I think there's just different ways that you can identify or at least say who God is. There's then there's the other things too, like Jesus. Where does he come in? Because that's if you talk to a number of my friends, the people I associate with, they always kind of bring up the Jesus factor. But we're not bringing him up. We're just talking kind of the overall who God is kind of thing today. And so, again, growing up, it was just this fear-based kind of mentality. Like, if you don't do certain things, then you're going to be sent to hell. And that's kind of a weird notion when it comes to, like, this all being, this all person that's supposed to be loving and enduring and take you, embrace you in. When he's set out to, if you don't do these things, then you're banished, basically. How can you view somebody as all accepting if they're going to banish you, kind of thing? So that kind of caused this rift within me to say, what, maybe this isn't the person that I want to associate with, But in so many times and in so many capacities of life, there's been things in my life that have happened, and the only thing I can really chuck it up is to, hey, that was God's doing. Because there's no explanation. There's no reason or explanation why I should be here other than my own merits and my own valor. But there's been so many instances that I was like, this can't be anything other than just some sort of divine intervention. So, in my interpretation of what God is, I really don't know. But I just know whatever it's meant to be is kind of supposed to be there, And so is there a God, Miss Mary?
Back to me for the big question. Ever since I was little, I always knew there was something. And so in my early years, I really started to go on a quest to learn more. And so what I did was I explored different religions. And I can say that in the beginning of that exploration of, say, Buddhism, different religions, I had a sense of guilt, as if I was betraying God. And when I really started diving into these different religions, I was seeing this trend that they all have the same foundational message. And so it became very clear to me that all the different people across the world and the different cultures and the different countries, everybody was just trying to understand something that they knew was there that they couldn't understand. And so that's how these different religions, I believe, were formed. That's just my opinion. And that underlying foundation basically had the same ideas, love your brother and your sister, practice the art of forgiveness, show up in the world as love. And so I started really seeing that I could go and I could take what felt good from each religion and implement that into my life. And that's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, and I think as I reflect back on everything that I've been taught, again, my mind is very meticulous. I tend to drive I tend to think about everything too much, which is also this show. So sometimes when I get on with Mary or any of these shows, I just get on because there's just so much there, and the spiritual part of me, the God part the piece that's connected to God is like, okay, just go with it because that's what is meant to be said. That's what's meant to be directed. It has brought upon you the word. The words will come. Whatever they're meant to be, they're meant to be. And so I guess that's my connection with God. It hasn't been a book. It hasn't been a person named Jesus. Hasn't been anything like that. And if anything, the fallacy of trusting a book is it's been created by man. And in the interpretation of those has also deviated into several religions, which are all supposed to be one God. But if they're supposed to be one word, one God, why is there so many different religions? So as we get into the next section, we're at the 10-minute mark, Miss.
Wow.
It goes by quick. So if you want to chime in a little bit, we're here. We're talking about religion and God and different things. But really what this show is supposed to be is that connection, that safe place that we can kind of dissolve things a little bit, to understand things and ask questions. So if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put those in the comment section here, there, wherever. Hearts,
wherever it is.
hearts, heart emojis are good too if you want to like drop a couple of those. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button too and hear more of us because we like to hear from you.
Yes.
But there is this struggle between what religion is and spirituality. I guess that's kind of the direction where we were going in our conversation prior to getting on. Can there be a separation? Is there a separation between religion and spirituality?
I believe that they're two different things.
Really? How
completely.
So?
Well, I mean, religion kind of points to the different explanations, like the different, like Christianity, Buddhism, all of the several ones that there are out there. Yep. And to me, spirituality is kind of tied into religion a lot. But when you really start diving into it, what I've learned is spirituality is basically just learning it's an inward journey. It's going inward and learning yourself at a deeper level so that you can show up in the world and the best way that you possibly can. So spirituality to me doesn't necessarily have anything to do with religion, although it may cross some threads there as you're learning. But to me, spirituality really is all about the inward journey, about your journey in, to learn more about yourself. But when you learn about yourself, you learn more about everything ultimately. Just happens, right? You stumble upon it. You learn different things and you go down different paths. So,
yeah, and I think, separating between religion and spirituality. There are certain moments and certain things that I just feel, and there's just nothing to explain it, I've sat there, when I first started, this career and everything that I'm doing now, there was moments where I didn't have anything going on. I'd be struggling with like, what do I do next for, work or money or whatever. And I'm sitting there in my living room and I'm just staring out the ceiling and I don't know who I'll talk to. I feel that there's somebody there, I would feel that it's, a presence, either from my past or something. I would just feel, I guess, comforting to know something or somebody was there listening. And in those moments of just solace, kind of like retreat, I would ask for those questions. I don't know if this is secret, throw all that in there. But, maybe a couple months later, I would go back there after a couple transactions or a couple things good went in my life. And I'm feeling like, that ask turned into reality. And is that ask a motivation and just kind of dissected, into the actions that I took, or is that some higher authority? But it just felt like there were just so many coincidences that it couldn't be anything other than that sense of connection with God or whatever it is, the universe.
Yeah, the universe, God,
whatever you want to
put
the
omnipresence, right? That is the everything, and that's the thing about getting still that we talked about a little bit before, is that you really get to tap into your own intuition. But then there's the question, well, where does that come from, right? I think we've all had that kind of question in our mind, like how do these miracles happen, or how do I, have the same thought as someone at the same time? And it all kind of boils down to we are all connected, right? And we're all part of this omnipresence, and we're basically just droplets of it. So that is a very deep conversation that we can go into.
We can. I mean, we have 20 more minutes. Or 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's so many oddities to life that it is intangible. And I've expressed that to you too, where like I write poetry, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm a poet, whatever. It's not a girly thing.
It's a great thing.
But I articulate myself in words, and I will literally sit there and let it kind of come out of my hand. And sometimes I'll even sit there and literally see words kind of drop down. I'm like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to write about. Or a feeling or emotion, let it kind of manifest. And there are some days where just it comes out and I'll write something and it'll only take 10 minutes. And then there's stuff that takes a couple weeks because I'm struggling with trying to understand the emotion. It's so weird, that connection to that higher authority, that being outside of us, that it's hard to articulate. And I want to go back to my Catholic roots and say, it's God, and this is what happened, and I prayed, and I said 5 Hail Marys and to our fathers, and everything came about. Everything was better, But there's a certain part of me that has those doubts too. There's that tangible part of me that's still like ingrained in science that like, well, okay, so this really isn't God, but this was again a manifestation of every little action that I took and brought me to this. And so there's that struggle, right? The religion versus the spirituality, and it drives me crazy because I don't know, and I want to put my thumb on it, and I really it's really hard to do that because God is out there, out there, outside of us.
Oh, and I also have started coming to the understanding that I think that science is also another form of what you could call people trying to explain the unexplainable. And there's a lot to the thinking and the emotions and the, what we express out there and what that brings back for us. And in our minds, we try to tie it to something. Is it this? Is it that? Is it God? Is it the thinking? Is it the emotions? And so that's like we're constantly on this search, right? And so I think it comes back to just having a faith and a trust in something.
You know what I really think it is, though? I think it's people's just fear of the unknown, fear of, and they're just like we're a species that categorizes and labels things a lot easier, and it makes it easier to label things. Oh, she's a woman. That's a man. Well, I'm more to that, but but in a quick instant, that's how we've evolved. For survival. It's just when you're in a dark room or you're in a dark lighted area, and then you see these things, and a lot of it's out of fear. You start categorizing. Okay, that's safe. That's unsafe. That's probably not a good place to go. That's probably not a good thing to think about. Let me go here. And so we're so used to that as a species, we just automatically dismiss things without really exploring it and understanding why. And so I think a lot of that, again, is tied back to our own sense of fear and survival, basically. Mm-hmm. And again, we categorize things. Oh, well, that didn't make sense, so it must be God.
Yeah. Well, and I think that because it is a survival instinct, that fear creates separation, because you're looking out for yourself, you're looking out for your survival, and that does create that separation with other people. I mean, even with other religions, and I tend to see that, people who practice religions that are based out of fear, or they practice the religion that maybe their interpretation that is it should be fear other people, fear other religions, that's where we create that separation. And I think that actually pulls us away from God, which God is love, right? That's what basically all the religions are saying. Yeah. God is love. So we could boil it down to that. What is God? God is love. And so I think that when we start to really explore different things and open our minds to the possibility that maybe there isn't just one way, right? Or maybe not just one right way, and just expand our consciousness a little bit, we'll start to break down those fears that create the separation. We can all be unified, as one.
Yeah, and I think about my dad too, because my dad passed in December. And so I think about him a lot, because he was such an ardent believer about God and religion. He went to church, I think, literally every day up until he passed, just because I think internally he knew his time was up. And when I went to go visit him those last couple of months, he had so many like rosaries. He had, I think in his box we found 20 different rosaries. And there was just, I don't know if there was one for every day of the week or one for every day of the month. I don't know. And then he had all these religious artifacts, and because I think he was led by fear, he was surrounding himself and comforting himself with this idea that he was going to be taken to the next place, the next area, the next whatever. And do I know that there's a heaven, a God? We really don't know unless we get there. But there are so many people that have firm beliefs in this stuff, and it's hard to even go talk to somebody who's Catholic or devout Christian or Muslim or whatever the religion is, because they're so on that other side that don't necessarily want to kind of talk about it, because they're just it's an absolute. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the middle. I know there's some absolutes, I think, because I felt them. Like do I believe everything that is constructed, like inspiration is constructed by? It comes from somewhere. It comes in here, so I can only suspect there's some sort of connection over here. But there's, like I said, that you can't really talk to those really stout religious people, because they're just so far over there, and they're not really open to that. And I've had so many people say, no, well, it's because you need to believe in Jesus. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, yeah, sure. But I want to have a safe place to talk about that, have that discussion. And that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that, anybody who has an absolute about anything, that's a closed-mindedness. Yeah. And there really aren't very many absolutes, we're finding out, right? As things are developing, like different things are becoming more mainstream. Yep. Science is advancing, and I tend to live my life with the kind of coming from the place of there are no absolutes. There are no absolutes in anything. And that helps me to keep an open mind so that I can explore new things and, really listen to myself through being able to sit in stillness and be quiet and be with me and go on my inward journey. I can feel what feels right, and I've noticed that what usually feels right is something that is inclusive and not fear-based, love-based, and I tend to just follow what feels right and good to me. You get that ping. When something feels good. Yeah. When something's a fear-based. If you read something and it's fear-based, that you get that twinge, right? And so it's like following what feels good in your heart, going with that.
So we're here in the last 10 minutes of the show. It goes by that quick.
Yes, it does.
And so basically, where do we go from here? What is it, trying to interpret it and try to break it down, you can go on and discuss for hours at a time. And the thing I appreciate, again, is to have a person like you in my life where I can kind of explore these things. There's no sense of like, oh, you have to believe this. You have to believe this. You and I think, at this point, we're on the fourth show. Believe it? Fourth show. And the things that we've done together, it's just like totally open, and it's this constant expression of like, there's no bad, there's no good. It's just, it is, and there's no expectations either. It's just, we're kind of on this path together and we're bringing the show here. But what is the overall learning lesson from all this that we can take back?
Ooh, that's a question for me.
Absolutely.
I think
I told you gotta interview me too.
Yeah, I know.
You're supposed to have questions for me too.
I definitely will. So
shoot them back.
Okay, what kinds of? Well, for me, the overall takeaway would be to just explore, right? I mean, go out.
That's
there
anti-religious, though.
Explore and learn. Oh, the first thing.
See, I'm giving her shit already. I'm gonna give her the first thing that somebody religious would say to her.
Well, it's really hard to persuade someone who is that absolute, who is that fear-based. Although I think if they start getting that they start having the curiosity and the question just to explore, they'll have that calling to explore. So I don't ever find it my position to try to persuade someone that has any belief that is that strong. But if you are getting a little twinge of curiosity about what it could be, what else is out there are so many different books on spirituality and religion that you can explore. And I guarantee if you start exploring, you'll see the threads that cross through every religion that are so very similar. And that kind of, so it's like slowly open the door, slowly open your mind to the possibility of exploration. That's kind of, I hit the desk, sorry.
She needs to watch the desk.
Sometimes
that's God interview. You need to be more religious, Mary.
Yeah.
Heather.
And Heather, yeah. And also to just learn to be with yourself and kind of, maybe the first step is to sit in stillness a little bit and kind of sit and ask yourself, what do I really feel about this?
I think the bigger thing is that people are afraid to choose the wrong thing, if there is such a thing. Again, as we talk about life and the things and aspects, every emotion has its counter emotion. Life has its balance. You don't always have good without bad, and you wouldn't appreciate the good unless you had bad. And so you have to think of God as all loving, and then the antithesis of that, I guess, is the devil, whatever. But they have their function, and for some reason, one doesn't overcome the other. It's this constant state, of good and evil, good and bad, and I think it's our failure in life as people, as a species, to explore both and not simply just rely on one thing versus another. But again, that's just my opinion. I'm upsetting the Jesus friends that I have, and you know who you are.
Well,
because I'll get a call later and be like, "Oh, you know Jesus in your life."
Ultimately, too, I think it goes down to. Oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you're failing.
Wow.
Failing. Here, let's just throw some music in there. We get some intro music to regain our thought process.
Live, right? Yeah.
Oh, so, yeah, that's what happens.
Oh, I was going to say something about, without bad, there is no good. And what if we got to a place where, circumstances and situations are situations, it's really our reaction to them that makes them either good or bad, I mean, if you read, one of the books I read was Conversations with God, and it really blew my mind. And as far as exploring different religions. I mean, it's all a journey in my mind and in my life. And so in the beginning of me exploring different things, I did hop to a couple of religions, and when it felt like it was time to explore different things, I explored different things. So I don't really think there is a wrong path to get back to love, which is ultimately what everything is. You know?
I think that's the ultimate stasis to be in, right? Is that constant presence of humility, appreciation, love, affection, getting all the love languages that you require in your life, to feel that place. But I think on the other end too, you can't have too much of a good thing. If everything in life is great and grand, then what's the point? Well, if you're accomplished and you've done everything. Yeah. What's the point in life? You're already done. You're done. Go wherever you need to go.
Well, and I also feel like it. When I said earlier it was about the inward journey and learning yourself to a deep level, you learn how to take care of yourself. You learn how to be more loving. You learn how to take more responsibility for your thoughts and actions. I believe all these things intertwine and can be considered spirituality. Yeah. Because if you look at the fact that if every person was, in this place of feeling good with an open heart, feeling love, we wouldn't have all this fear. You can't have, gratitude and fear living in the same space. So if we all get to this place of feeling love, feeling good, we are naturally going to be, treating other people differently, showing up in our lives differently, leading with more of an open heart in the world. I mean, that's really what it boils down to for me is like, how do I become the best me so that I can bring that to the world? Because essentially that is going to spread, right? That kind of action towards your brother, your sister, you want to call us all brothers and sisters, or your fellow man.
We're all connected, and every action that we take there's an opposite reaction to everything we do. Yeah. And we affect each other. And, the biggest takeaway, if you are religious, I will say that the last thing you want to do is embark and then just throw all your religion on somebody because they're not going to change their mind. If anything, they're going to push them away. And I think that's what happened to me so young. You have all these priests and people coming in saying, you have to do it this way. God says you have to do it this way. And I'm like, well, like sex is a big one, right? Mm-hmm. God says no sex. But why does it feel so good then? Why is it so nice to be touched and grabbed and moved around and done stuff too?
Well, yeah, and there's
whatever.
There's a lot of religions that actually bring in sex as a good thing and sex as a creation energy. So there's that too. And I think at the original fear-based things, people thought, sex is bad. Look at all the horrible things that caused in some of the churches and some of the things, because when we live out of fear, we're going to repress certain things instead of learning about them, and they're going to come out eventually in some way, and it's usually not in a positive way, right? So explore the different things that are out there. There are a lot of different books that are not necessarily religious, but just kind of get your mind thinking about, what are the possibilities that could be out there? Like different ways of thinking. It's about opening your perspective.
If you want to do that, if you want to stay religious, you can do that too.
Open your mind.
But that I think, as we wrap up, we're in the last couple minutes. I think to also recognize that religion gives somebody a sense of comfort. To have that book, to recite a psalm that really they connect with. It gives them that sense of purpose, creation, that they have a direction to go to. And I think the biggest fault, as us as a species, is we don't allow, or at least have an open kind of perspective on exploring different things and having a different alternative. It is what it is. You just have to deal with that.
And I absolutely think that religions are beautiful. I mean, they do bring people a lot of hope, and that's a big part of it. Is do you have hope? Do you have faith in something? And they absolutely bring that for a lot of people. And then a lot of the things, I think it's just being aware of how you're approaching that religion, no matter what religion it is. Yeah. I think that you can pick any religion you want, and as long as you're really being aware of how you're approaching that religion, are you approaching it from a loving space or a fear-based space? Are you taking certain things in the way that your mind understands it, or are you really diving in to see, like, what is the real message here? Because some of the messages can be misinterpreted several different ways, right? So going to studies to learn a little bit more about it, not just taking things at face value, but, paying attention to yourself as well as how are you showing up in this religion? It's all about us,
It's all about love.
Yeah.
So as we end the show there today, that's it. 30 minutes. It goes by so quickly.
It does, yes.
So my name is Robin Morales, RCO Network, with Mary VanAlstyne. We're going to be saying...
I hit the desk again.
God's knocking on your door. He's saying, I don't like what you're saying, Mary Heather VanAlstyne. I will talk to you later after the show. So catch us next week, next Tuesday, 2 o'clock at the 2 o'clock hour, and we'll answer your questions. Go and drop whatever you want to. Topics, anything else, we'll get back to them, and see you guys next time.